Hey, Mickey, what's up?
Hey Jess, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. Everyone's staying home inside, and I'm excited about what we're talking about this week. Gender, um,
Yes.
especially gender schema and gender socialization. If you don't know it, gender schema is like basically a thought of organized set of gender related beliefs that can influence your behavior. Um, And gender socialization is kind of when people are socialized into a gender. And a lot of it, especially a lot of research shows that it definitely can start at birth and is very cultural, the way gender is. Gender and sex, it's always been a huge kind of thing. Like, what is gender? What is sex? And gender is more related towards behaviors and beliefs and attitudes.
Mm-hmm.
Your sex is kind of like your parts, your sexual parts. And that can be very confusing because there are people who are intersexual and they can have male and female parts, but and a lot of people don't know about intersexual people because um, when those babies are born, either the doctor, mostly the doctor chooses which one, or the parent just picks which one because it's not normal in certain cultures to have both, even though there are people who are born with both. But when it comes to gender, there's so many attitudes and beliefs about it. Even subtle, very subtle things are very can be gender related as well. What are your thoughts on gender, Mickey?
So, at what age would you say they decide on the sex?
When
Do
it
they
comes
do it
to
right away?
intersexual, are
Yeah.
you saying when it comes to intersexual babies?
Yes.
Basically, right when they're still at the hospital,
Oh wow.
they
That's
come
a
out.
difficult decision.
Yeah,
Wow.
and I think nowadays a lot of people who just don't really hear about it. Sometimes they really find out after the baby comes out, and then they really
Mm-hmm.
see, um, and then they just can do an incision. But
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people don't even know that intersexual people there are intersexual people, and I really saw this really great movie called Predestination. It's about time travel, but
Oh,
it's about how everything was predetermined and how the child who's born had both parts
okay.
and was raised as a woman, but outmastered in certain things because of just basically they're going off stereotypes, but basically it was about an intersexual baby. And but that's intersexualism, but then there's also just in general gender. And
Mm-hmm.
gender is so fluid, it's a huge spectrum, but really there's so many things around gender. And there's things around the Cinderella syndrome that we have to wait, especially for women, that they have to wait for their prince. They have to being pretty and wait for the prince. They have to attract the male gaze. They have to do certain things to get someone to look at them. And seems to be that a lot of men are still taught to hold in their emotions. And there was this really great book by William Pollock.
Uh-huh.
He's a Harvard psychiatrist, and he wrote a book called about the mask of masculinity and how that people still live in a very strict boy culture, that demands that men still have emotional rigidity and still be very stoic and holding their feelings and you know but it also does come from society and comes from culture. It comes from telling our little girls that you're pretty, all the boys are going to be on you, or telling just even the word boy is gendered, but telling a little boy, hey, you're going to be big and strong when you grow up. And it's how much attention we give to each child. It's what the parents do, and it's how children interact at schools. If a boy knocks down another boy's toys, they may start, screaming at each other, fighting. But if knocked on the girl's toys, then the boy may be like, the teacher may say, "Hey, just get away from her stuff." But there's no, because they're saying, "Oh, boys will be like boys." But when you say boys will be like boys, that's another gender stereotype. you are basically accepting that and saying that it's okay, it's normal. But the thing is, within cultures, you normalize gender and gender attitudes and genderized behaviors. And when you do that, you are normalizing the stereotypes. Have you,
Exactly.
do you see any, like in culture? What are your thoughts on this,
I
Nikki?
think I think gender play a major role in, like, simple as going to therapy, for example.
Exactly.
A lot of male, they don't want to go to therapy because they don't want to sit with someone, and then I think it's very difficult for a male to find a good therapist that they can be vulnerable with and just
Mhm.
open up. And it's easier for us to women to just be like, okay, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling depressed or postpartum or whatever it is, I'm gonna go seek professional help. And because it's just sitting down, expressing emotions, crying, it's kind of like take away from masculinity. That's just what they was, kind of thought, growing up from their homes.
I agree on two notes. One note is that there was another book called Gender and the Social Construction of Illness. And so basically, in that book, they showed how, even when it comes to the health world, men were less likely to go to the doctor, even
Hmm.
if they really had, they were less likely to visit facilities, even if they had health problems, because of, the whole gender thing. I'm very manly. I can hold it. I can deal with it. They were just less likely to go to the doctor. And on a side note, when you talk about going to the therapist, that makes me really think about kind of how not just gender, but also race. There's a huge thing, and especially certain race communities or ethnic communities, about going to the therapy and how therapist is a white thing to do. And I do see that a lot in Black culture, and I always wonder about that as well. Um,
Yeah.
that's a but yeah, so gender is really huge, and I find that, I feel that like gender stereotypes do play um, a role in domestic violence.
It does.
And I know that, so what are your thoughts on that one, Mickey? Because I know you interact a lot with people that have, are in or have, or trying to get out or have, or
Hmm.
are out of domestic violence.
Well, a lot of people think that men cannot be victim of domestic violence because they're men. But
Mm-hmm.
that's not necessarily true because there's different part to domestic violence. There's the physical part, there's emotional part, there's verbal abuse, there's financial abuse, there's common threats. There's so many parts because a woman may not be able to physically beat down a man, but she can do it with her words. You know what I'm like, you stupid, you worthless, you useless. Every time this man walk in the house, like, it's being beat down over and over again. And financial abuse, give me the check. Where is the check? And now, like things like that. And depends. Some men, if they bigger than some women, if they bigger than the man, or they know that the man is not going to hit them back, they usually get very aggressive towards the men because some people know it's not it's not gentlemanlike to hit a woman. So therefore, they start throwing pots, start throwing things, not expecting to get hit back. So, and the man not gonna tell his friends. And abuse, it's under report when it comes to men. Sexual abuse, domestic violence, rape. A lot of men get raped, but they will not report it.
Yep.
But a lot of women tend to report this. Most of the calls that I get, it's like women. Once at the blue moon, the men will call, and then usually like, "Do you guys help men?" It's kind of like they almost didn't want to make the call, as if, or do you? They usually ask me, "Do you usually get call from men calling you for services?" Or some women will be like, "Men get abused too. How can this happen?" Because we live in a society and people bickering and they bump heads and it happens.
I just find it very interesting because, when it comes to culture, sometimes there are double standards. Especially in domestic violence, there's a lot of double standards. And especially like if there's like you said, there are women that are the abusers, men that are the abusers. And when women become the abusers, it's it's a double there's a thing called double bind. It's, for example, let's say there's a study where, let's say someone got an offer to have a position at
Mm-hmm.
being a professor, and then that person sent an email saying that, well, I want to raise, I want a better offer. So when that person did that, and they were a woman, basically the offer was rejected because they were acting too masculine. Or when a man acts too feminine, it's a sign that they're weak. So it's just very interesting how, we interact in culture and we interact in society, but almost a lot of things we do, especially when it comes to domestic violence, a lot of the advertisements are towards women.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big gap for men. It's the way we do it. It's the way we advertise, who we advertise it to, and it's the idea of belonging. You know, and I think especially when it comes to policing, there are studies about policing being very gender biased, and some police they don't do full investigations about domestic violence, and even if the man was the victim, that's a huge gap as well when it comes to policing that. Um, and it's about what we do and how we treat things and how we interact
Exactly.
and, you know, what biases we're bringing to the table as well. I was looking up some because I was thinking, well, I think gender also ties to suicide and
Mm-hmm.
how it ties to shame and what a lot of women get shamed on in society, when I think about it, is how thin they are or, what they look like. And that's huge. A lot of people are still trying to go after that. And men, I mean, what are some things you think men get, they face when it comes to shame?
I think it's the provider. A lot of when it comes to financial support, a lot of men get the beat done if they cannot provide for their family. They feel ashamed. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because they can't be head of the household. Because there are times that in relationship we might have to switch role because at this point, if you marry a lawyer and then you're a construction worker, it might be difficult for a man to be head of the household, like, when it comes to financially, because the lawyer just happened to make more money. And then it makes some men will feel insecure, not because they feel like it, because society makes them feel
Mhm.
insecure.
That,
Like their friends or family, like, things like that. So, and also, I think in school we have
yeah,
the gender bias because like
definitely.
when it comes to science and math and engineering and all these things, it goes towards men. And then
Mhm.
women supposed to be like nurse, like, different type of career.
Pink
So
jobs, yeah, they're usually like pink and blue jobs. That's like the pink jobs are really considered like exactly what you said, kind of
mhm.
the nurse or someone who's a provider. And it's so interesting how there's still a pay gap. There's gender pay is still there. There's a huge gap, but when you get old, the person who's most likely going to watch you, if you have a son and a daughter, is the daughter,
True.
which is very interesting. And there's still a gender pay gap. And a lot of the times, a lot of women, they're not working because they're taking care of, their dad, or they're taking care of someone.
Mhm.
And it's just very interesting. It's still a huge, huge, dimension of how gender plays roles in society, but also how communication plays a role. We don't really communicate about suicide. I went to this training and they saying, she said, when my son died, um, if he was in a car accident, people would bring me casseroles. But because he took his own life, no one cared.
Wow.
And it's just very interesting. And the way we interact with each other in society about gender, about suicide, about mental health, about all the different aspects of actual things going on in society, about homelessness, about poverty. We need to talk, but we don't. and we just let it sit there, and just the biases and the stereotypes build up.
You know, just have a open environment, just listen to people what they have to say without the judgment. If a man wants to cry about a breakup, he should be able to do that, you know.
Exactly. I had a supervisor tell me once that um, he said Mauna, which means earth, or earth maker, and Ho Chunk, which is a Native American language and really common with the Winnebago, the Ho Chunk people. He said Mauna gave us tear ducts for a reason, and Mauna gave us tear ducts to everybody,
Hmm.
because we all have them so that we can cry. It is a part of our being to cry,
You
and I
know,
loved it.
no, that's
It's
actually a
deep. Oh
very
my
beautiful
god.
statement. Like, I like that, you know, I really like that statement.
Mhm. Yeah, I loved it. But yeah, I can talk about gender all day, but I think totally talking about race, and especially about the stereotypes when it comes to different communities, especially the Black community, is probably would be something to talk about as well.
I mean, we're definitely going to have to talk about gender again,
Yeah,
like in a different time, because it's just so much to cover, you know, so we can only cover so many topics and subjects in short amount of time. So,
exactly. Okay, but well, thanks guys for watching our video today. We do it because we enjoy talking about real things going on in society. But we'll see you guys next week, hopefully.
all right, thank you guys, bye.